The meeting between Apple CEO Tim Cook and the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi wasn't going too well. Just days earlier, their proposal to make India a dumping ground for refurbished second-hand iPhones was rejected. Tim Cook definitely wanted to bring Apple into India, but on his own terms. He now asked the Indian Prime Minister permission to open Apple-owned retail stores in India. PM Modi rejected this as well. Instead, asked Apple to set up manufacturing operations in India rather than import phones. But Cook did not believe that Indians would be able to afford Apple's premium phones in large enough numbers to make it viable. That was in May 2016. Oh, how times change. Barely 7 years later, Apple exported 40,000 crore, $5 billion worth of made-in-India iPhones to Europe and other countries, doubling India's phone exports to $11 billion and alone accounted for almost half of the total smartphone exports of 85,000 crore. Additionally, Indians themselves bought another 33,000 crore of $4 billion worth of Apple products, giving Cook belief that the market's potential is only just awakening. However, the story for Apple from 2016 to 2023 has been full of stops and starts. After Cook's frosty meeting with the Prime Minister in May of 2016, Apple still stubbornly kept asking for special favors.
Give us duty concessions for 15 years. No commitment to 30% local sourcing.
This attitude ticked off the then Commerce Minister Nirmala Sitharaman, who responded with a written reply in Parliament.
Rejected.
The doors to India seemed to have closed for Apple. But then Apple changed tack. So far, India was being handled by a team based out of Apple's headquarters in Cupertino, California. Now, it set up a local team staffed with Indians who aligned themselves to Modi's favorite themes: Make in India, employment generation, and India as a high-tech export hub. How can Apple contribute to India's growth story? After 3 years of negotiations, Apple managed to convince the government to tweak its rule for local sourcing. Because as a rule, Apple never manufactures anything anywhere in the world. Instead uses third parties like Foxconn. So allow our vendors' local manufacturing to be counted as ours. The government agreed, but did not agree that Chinese component makers come into India along with them. See, there are geopolitical realities that need to be taken into account. So Apple brought in its Taiwanese vendors, Foxconn, Pegatron and Winstron. The latter faced labor violence in their Bangalore facility. See BISBO story, but they still stuck to their task. The government then agreed to allow it to set up an online store too, but made them promise to not undercut prices and drive resellers out of business. So Apple got involved with industry associations and agreed to find ways to work with Indian smartphone companies like Lava, Micromax and Dixon. But it was the Modi government's PLI, Production Linked Incentive Scheme, that was the game changer. That gave heavy incentives to those who chose India as their China Plus One production base. Smartphones were one of the 14 selected sectors, but here too Apple had to be flexible and agreed when the minimum value of a phone eligible under PLI was brought down from $300 to $200. Cook is now planning on moving 12 to 18% of his global smartphone production from China to India. So there were smiles all around when this time Tim Cook met the Prime Minister to inaugurate his signature stores in Mumbai and Delhi in mid-April. Their 523rd and 524th Apple store worldwide. Apple is now quietly persuading state governments to allow hostel facilities for women within factory premises, a great way to increase the falling participation of women in the workforce. Already, Apple and its ecosystem provides jobs to 100,000 people, which they expect to double the next year. Seeing the results, the government is asking Apple to deepen its commitment, promising incentives over and above the $9 billion offered under PLI. So Cook has tied up with the Tatas, who will invest $800 million, 6,300 crore, to make Apple's iPhone casings, among other components. And for the assembly of the camera module, the government has given a green light to Chinese company Sunny Optic to set up a $300 million plant in India. The PLI scheme is the only exception where the Modi government is permitting Chinese companies to manufacture in India, giving 14 clearances. The key metric the government is now looking at is value addition, meaning if you import 4 billion worth of components and export 5 billion, then your value addition is 25%. Though right now, it is just 14% for Apple. But with the new modules, the value addition will go as high as 27 to 30%, and as they add more local manufacturing, it will rise to the targeted 40% by FY26, the last year of the PLI scheme. This percentage is in line with China, where value addition is 40%, and Vietnam, where it is around 30%. But it is not just iPhones. Indians have taken a liking to all of Apple's products. And for the first time, MacBook sales overtook Dell in Q3 2022 with over 450,000 units sold. They achieved this by giving hefty discounts to students. They also benefited from the startup ecosystem that considers Apple products cooler, and by making inroads into corporates, a market previously dominated by Dell and Lenovo. Now they will look to improve upon the 6% smartphone share they have in India, far lagging China's 24% and USA's 57%. BISBO's limerick. Cook is now the apple of our eyes. Made in India phones can rocket to the skies. But he almost missed the boat, thinking his products were goat. It's those little adjustments where the real story lies. You will also find these sources listed in our video description section.